try.
Oh, he said to try. Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Ellie, his name is Frederick Hemery, Hemey.
Wonderful. Okay. And we are live on Facebook now.
Hey, Facebook. I'm going to let Cecilia in here. She's another one of our guests today. And we'll be going live in 2 minutes. Cecilia, hello. Good afternoon. Yes, you're in California, so it's a little earlier than it is here in Pittsburgh. Thank you for joining us. Here, I'm going to ask you to unmute. All right. If you could click, there we go. Hi, Cecilia.
Hello.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you. I want to introduce you to Warren Goss, who's our D-Day veteran, who's our feature guest tonight.
What an honor to be here with Mr. and Mrs. Goss. Thank you.
Hi. This is Mrs. Goss.
Cecilia.
Oh, hi, Mrs. Goss.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
Fine. Whereabouts are you?
I'm here in Swickley at our family room table.
Okay.
Near Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Okay.
And I know, Cecilia, you're in California, Northern California, correct?
Correct. Berkeley, California.
Well, I've spent part of today watching a number of your presentations and really going over the, gosh, you've put in to the Bataan Legacy Historical Society is just phenomenal. Not only kind of sharing the history, but really pushing, the California curriculum to include information.
Move this out of the way, Dad.
Just love it. It's just terrific.
Comes, we'll put him here.
There we go. I'm going to mute Rhonda for a second. Just amazing work that you've done, Cecilia. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Todd, and thank you to Nick for introducing us.
Yes, that's right.
Nick of the logbook.
The logbook project. That's
yes.
Right. So Ellie, I think it's time. You want me to? I'll start the theme music.
Perfect. All right.
We will roll. Welcome, everybody. Welcome on this wonderful blustery here in Pittsburgh Sunday afternoon. My name is Todd, and this is Greatest Generation Live, and it is Sunday, November 1st, All Saints Day, which is the eve of All Souls Day, and Halloween is the eve of All Saints Day. 3 holidays right in a row. So here we are with another edition of Greatest Generation Live, and we're the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we produce this program, which is really for and about, oh, here we go. Bringing it back up a little bit as people still get in from the waiting room. This is a program about World War II and World War II veterans. We like to feature stories and veterans from World War II. And today, boy, we have some great ones, ranging from our friend 12-year-old Henry Shopke from Wisconsin and his autograph collection. I've twisted his arm to come back with us and tell us a little bit more about whose autographs he's collected. We have Cecilia Gaerlan from the Bataan Legacy Historical Society, which has done wonderful work kind of celebrating, honoring, preserving, and sharing the history of the Philippines in World War II, and especially the role of Filipino military and civilians in the war. And I know that her father has just an unbelievable World War II story that I'd love her to share as best she could with us. And then, of course, we have the beloved, the one, the only, one of the most beloved veterans of the Veterans Breakfast Club, Warren Goss, D-Day veteran who landed on Utah Beach, look at him shaking his head, on June 6, 1944, and then fought his way all the way through Germany in the end of the war in the 70th Infantry Division. And I said to him, Warren, really, we need at least 2 programs with Warren because so many of his stories are he has such a vivid memory. He has so many stories. He has stories just from his childhood growing up that I think are just fascinating to share. We have a lot to get to, but first, it's become a habit here in the fall of 2020. Hey, Rick, good to see you.
Good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for honoring the general.
I knew that if the General Warren Goss showed up, that you'd be here too. So
absolutely.
Rick Weber, the 101st Airborne Division Vietnam veteran. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
No, thank you for honoring my friend.
We have a habit here in the fall of 2020 of reporting on the Steelers score. And Jim Jameson, we're going to ask you to tell us what the score is here, because I know we have some people joining us only after the game is over. What's going on, Jim?
That's 28-24 with the Ravens driving.
28-24 Steelers.
Yes.
Ravens driving. All right. Well, you'll let us know how it ends up. All right.
I'll watch.
Okay. Very good. Hey, I want to let people know, first of all, that we have our happy hour tomorrow, and I do hope you'll join us. Our happy hour is at 7 p.m. It is on this same Zoom station. This is BBC Live Happy Hour. And tomorrow we'll be marking or commemorating the 245th birthday of the Marine Corps. I know we're doing it 10 days early. We couldn't do it on November 9th. We have something else going on that day that you'll hear about. So we're doing it a little bit early. So I'm calling upon all Marine Corps veterans to join us and celebrate the birthday. You know, the Marine Corps, more than any other branch of service, really goes all out to celebrate their birthday. And so we are getting a lot of people emailing me and calling saying that they're going to be on. So that's wonderful. Join us tomorrow at 7 for the Marine Corps birthday if you can. Oh, and also I want to let you know, I just kind of secured two guests for future Greatest Generation Live episodes that I'm really excited about. One is this guy, I'll show you, Ray Caskey. Ray Caskey is going to be our guest next week. He's a sculptor, born and raised in Pittsburgh, went to Carnegie Tech, now Carnegie Mellon University, and is now a very well-known sculptor. You might ask, why are we having a sculptor on Greatest Generation Live? Well, probably, I think he would say, and I think he will say when he comes on, that the capstone of his artistic career, you'll know he did, for example, this is the Chief, Art Rooney, who's the founder of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a statue that's outside Heinz Field right now. But he would say that probably the capstone of his artistic career was his contribution to the National World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. He was the principal artist behind the memorial. And for my money, he did the most intriguing and most engaging part of that whole memorial experience, which are the 24 bas-relief panels that surround that are there in the memorial, that kind of walk you through the war in Europe, the war in the Pacific, and also the war at home. And you'll probably, if you've been to the memorial, you've probably been drawn to them like I have. They're just the detail, the lifelike kind of composition of each panel is just stunning to me. And this is one of my favorite. This is I think the first one, which is a family sitting around the radio, listening to the news on December 7th, 1941, that Pearl Harbor has been bombed. And Ray has agreed to come on and kind of walk us through each of the panels, how he came up with the concept of it, what he was trying to represent in them. I know there are some hidden there's some hidden stories I've heard in these panels, some things going on in the panels that you don't see at first blush, but if you look closely, you could see it, and he's going to reveal some of those to us. So that is going to be 1 week from today. That is going to be Sunday, November 8th at 4 p.m. Eastern time, Sunday, November 8th. Ray Caskey is going to be here talking about the National World War II Memorial and the wonderful bas-relief panels that he contributed to the memorial. And then I'm so excited about this that I just recently, yesterday, heard back from the daughter, Denise Williams, of this man, Gail Halverson. Gail Halverson is a name that you've maybe have run across at some point. He is a World War II veteran. He was a transport pilot in World War II, but he became very famous, internationally famous, for what he did 3 years after World War II during the Berlin airlift from 1948 to 1949. He just celebrated his 100th birthday, so there was a lot of media attention paid to him for his 100th birthday because of the role that he played. He was a pilot in the Berlin airlift, and you'll remember what the Berlin airlift was. The Soviet Union blockaded West Berlin, and so that no supply, no fuel, no food, no medicine, could go into a city that was really going to starve to death unless there was some kind of way to find a way to supply it. And the way that the Americans and the British determined that they would do would just be to fly in the supplies. It was a massive supply effort. At its peak, I think a plane touched down at Tempelhof Airport in Berlin every 60 seconds. That's 1,400 to 1,500 a day, round the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These are C-47s and C-54s. And they were landing all the supplies the city would need to stay alive. And they did it for almost 1 year. And Gail Halverson was one of those pilots. And when he was kind of, after he had landed one trip, he saw some skinny looking kids looking through a fence. He had 2 sticks of gum in his pocket. He gave them the sticks of gum through the fence, and he saw how carefully they divided the little sticks of gum. And, among 30 kids, each kid got a little piece of gum. And the kids who didn't get any, they just sniffed the wrapper. That's how, and he realized how desperate these kids were. And so he determined, he gathered a bunch of rations, built little parachutes, and dropped them over West Berlin for the kids. And kids started writing to the airbase calling him dear, and he would wiggle the wings so that they would know it was his plane. And they say, "Dear Uncle Wiggle Wings, send me some chocolate. I have a red house with a chicken coop in the backyard. You can't miss it, And so he got, the story that I've read, of course, is that he got called in by William Tunner, Lieutenant General William Tunner, who was the head of the commander of the Berlin Airlift. And Gail thought he was going to get chewed out for doing this. And Tunner said, "You're a genius. This is the greatest publicity that we could get in this operation. How did you do it? And let's make sure that all the pilots are doing it." And so that's what started the fascinating part of the Berlin Airlift, which was dropping candy to children in West Berlin in World War II. Gail is just a magnificent storyteller. He has a lot of wisdom to share. I know that he has been traveling the world, even as he approached 100. Here he is with President Angela Merkel in Germany. But COVID-19 has grounded those travels, and that means he's able to come onto our program. So I'm very, very excited about that. That will be on Sunday, November 22nd at 4 p.m. Sunday, November 22nd. But let's get to the program now. We have, hey, Jim, do you have anything to report on the Steeler game?
Yeah, they stopped them about the 7-yard line, and it's now the Steelers' ball. They got four yards on the first down, and the Ravens took a timeout. So
I love it. I'm looking at
one more timeout, then we can run the clock down.
I'm looking at Julie in Maine. I'm looking at Cecelia in California. I'm looking at Henry in Wisconsin. They don't care a whit about the Steelers game score, but thank you for hanging in there. And I want to go to Henry. Henry, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
If you'll remember, this is Henry Schobke from Wisconsin. He's a wonderful autograph collector, and he's been collecting autographs of World War II veterans and has quite a collection. Henry, how many autographs have you collected?
I'm like about 96.
Oh my goodness, look at these. I'm sharing with our viewers here just some of the names of these illustrious veterans that you've collected. I mean, George Shultz, who was former Secretary of State, many people will remember him. George Mendonça, who was probably, we're not quite sure, are we, Henry? He was probably the sailor who kissed the woman in Times Square on August 14th, 1945.
Yeah.
And then you got another guy, Carl Muscolero, who also claimed to be that sailor. I think like 24 people have claimed to be the sailor. Very few people have claimed to be the nurse. Ben Ferencz, I certainly know him. He's the prosecutor, the last living prosecutor of the Nuremberg trials. Guy Prestia, our very own Guy Prestia, who lives right near us here in near Pittsburgh, comes to our Veterans Breakfast Club events. How do you get most of these, Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter, how do you get these autographs, Henry?
Well, I mainly I find them online. Like I'll find articles or other people who also write to them. and I'm able to find like different addresses or phone numbers or stuff to write to them, or emails or stuff like that.
And that's how you got Jimmy Carter's autograph?
Well, I sent 2 books to the Carter Center, and they included a signed book plate for each of them. So
Now, is there any way you could hook us up and get Jimmy Carter on our program?
no.
I'm just kidding. But you can see, I love how you have all the signers broken down, you know, those who were involved in the Ghost Army, USS Indianapolis survivors, Battle of the Bulge veterans, just stunning women in World War II. Emily Drake, she's from Pittsburgh. She comes to our Veterans Breakfast Club events. I'd love to get her on one of these programs. Tuskegee Airmen. Are there, and what I love about this, Henry, is that you learn a little bit about their history and their service.
Yeah. A lot of them like send like an article or pictures and stuff. So it's fun looking over that stuff.
It is wonderful. Look at all these names: Pearl Harbor survivors, Iwo Jima veterans. Boy. And then you have a video that about them that I could share the link to it. And then you know, some pictures here. George Mendonça signed the Kissing Sailor picture. Just wonderful stuff, Henry. Thank you so much. And I know Roland Glenn, who's with us, a World War II veteran in Maine. Roland, I know that you've been very moved and impressed by Henry's efforts. What questions do you have for Henry, or what thoughts do you have on Henry's project? I'm going to ask you to unmute there, Roland.
Henry, what do you think you're going to do with all this wonderful material that you have collected?
Well, probably just pass it down through the family through like generations, I don't know. And maybe like even eventually like send it to a museum or something.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with how well organized you have collected all of this data. And as I've said to you in emails, I think you've got something that eventually not only would go to a museum, but you might have something you would want to publish.
Yeah.
How did you get started initially doing this?
Well, I always like collecting autographs, and I've been always interested in history, and I saw a video of someone who's collected World War II autographs, and that made me want to start collecting them.
I think you told me that collecting runs in your family.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, my brother collects tons of sports autographs and writes to sports players. My dad has a huge baseball collection from when he was a kid, with baseballs signed by tons of people, including Mickey Mantle.
How great.
Yeah. And I also used to collect sports autographs too.
How great. That's so neat. I just love the idea of collecting these veterans autographs. And we have 2 World War II veterans here with us, Jack Morrow and Warren Goss, who have not signed. I know that Roland is sending you his autograph, but I know Warren and Jack Morrow, we're going to have to, oh, Julia Parsons, Navy Wave. Yeah, we've got to get them to sign for you also, Henry, okay?
Yeah, thanks.
I'll put in a good word for you. Don't worry. I think we could get.
Hey, Todd.
Okay. I can hear you, Rick.
I have, we're going to have a small breakfast on the Veterans Day, and I'm going to have 3 World War II guys here, so I'll make sure he gets their autographs.
Wonderful, Rick. Thank you. Yes.
And somewhere I have an autograph that I'm not going to tell him whose it is. I'm going to have to do the research on it, but you know who it is.
I do. Yes, I do
And-
know who it is.
Yeah, you do know who it is. I'll make sure he gets a picture of the parachute.
Oh, that is very kind of
Yes.
you, Rick.
This is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Henry, thank you so much for joining us today and for caring enough to track these autographs down and coming onto our program and listening to the wonderful stories that we share here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Hey, I want to go to Cecelia. How are you, Cecelia?
Very well, thank you. Before we start, Henry, would you consider being featured on our website under student works? Because we want to highlight some of the works done by young students like yourself. So if you agree, if you can write your motivation for starting this, and if you want to send us your picture so we can feature you. I could ask Todd, I don't know if I can send him an email so
Yeah.
he can see what's featured.
Yeah.
I can put my email in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
if
Henry
you
will-
agree.
Henry will put his email in the chat and you can retrieve it from the chat, Cecelia.
Okay.
And if
that's
for some
true.
reason you can't, just send me a note and I will
Okay.
connect you to, because I have both your emails. Yeah, that is terrific. I think we're just also delighted that we have a 12-year-old, a smart 12-year-old kid
Yes.
joining us from Wisconsin. Makes these programs a lot more fun. What also makes it fun is having people like Cecelia here join us. Nick DeVoe, thank you very much from the Logbook Project, connected us. I saw immediately the work that you were doing with the Bataan Legacy Historical Society. And I just realized what important work it is. We don't have that many Filipino Americans living here in Western Pennsylvania. So I think the story of the Philippines in World War II is not probably as well known here as it is maybe on the West Coast. But we certainly do know that, the Philippines was the first place where there was really ground combat, where the Americans faced ground combat in World War II. It was one of the last places to be liberated at the end of the war. And I think what most Americans don't understand is the scale of the devastation that the Philippines suffered in World War II. We hear about Dresden, we hear about Poland and Ukraine and Belarus, and those places absolutely just got destroyed. But the Philippines, oh my, I've seen pictures, Cecelia, of what Manila looked like in 1945. It was a parking lot. I mean, a massive city, the Pearl of the Orient, just
Yes.
laid,
Mhm.
just leveled completely. And I know it's a big story and I'm talking a lot, but I just want to commend you on the work that you've done. What
Thank
inspired
you.
you to found this organization, and what does the organization do?
Well, it started, I actually wrote a historical fiction, which was set, half of it was set during World War II. And then when I was doing the reading stage, I actually, it became a play. I wrote it into a play, from a novel to a play. And then when we were doing the stage readings, I realized that not too many people had heard about the Bataan Death March. And my father, took part in the Death March. And so that's the beginning. And then I found some websites which denigrated the role of the Filipinos during the war, and that actually got me going. I took it personally because my father was in the march, and so I started researching. I started interviewing veterans, and then the first Bataan Death March that we did here, the commemoration, was in 2012. And except for this year, we had been doing it annually since 2012. And we try to get the young students, cadets, high school cadets, as well as university cadets to join the event.
Cecelia, I wonder if a lot of Americans don't understand that, one of the best trained divisions of the Army was in the Philippines. It was the Philippine Division when the Japanese invaded in early 1942. And a big part of the Philippine Division were people like your father, who were, I think, called Philippine Scouts. They were.
That's different, actually.
Oh, that's different. Please,
Yes.
yeah, tell us.
because what happened was on July 26, 1941, there was a military order creating the US Army Forces in the Far East, which was commanded by General Douglas MacArthur. And the order, it ordered all organized forces in the Philippines, as well as the Philippine Department, which was where the Philippine Scouts was under, to be formed into the US Army Forces in the Far East. So not too many people know, including myself, that when USAFE, as we called it, was formed, there were about 119,000 Philippine Commonwealth Army Filipinos, 12,000 Philippine Scouts, mostly Filipinos with American officers, and about 19,000 Americans. So that was the composition of USAFE. But when the order came, the initial mobilization did not take place until September of 1941. My own father was only called in November of 1941. So by December 8th, or that was the timeline in the Philippines, you know. So the Philippine Commonwealth was still being formed, and there were not enough supplies. They only had, the Philippine Commonwealth soldiers had one set of khaki uniform with thinly soled tennis shoes and World War I ammunition and arms.
Yeah, and you've mentioned USAFE. That was United States Armed Forces of the Far East.
In the Far East, yeah.
In the
Armed
Far
Forces
East.
In the Far East. Yes.
And I want to show a picture of your father here, right here.
Oh, thank you.
This is, you know, I've read a bit of his story, and the suffering that he endured, I cannot imagine, and I don't understand how he possibly could have survived the Bataan Death March and Camp O'Donnell and the torture of both of those experiences when so many others did not. This was his 41st Infantry Regiment of the Philippine Army. Did you growing up, you grew up in the Philippines,
Yes.
Did he talk much about the war?
Well, you know, when we were growing up as children, the way he spoke about it was like a cowboy story. You know, he was like a stand-up comedian. You know, he would do sound effects, and he was a comedian. But yeah, so he masked all these, sufferings. And then when I started doing research, I found an analysis of his own regiment from Fort Benning. You know, it was part of the officers training course. And I just cried when I read this report, because before April 9, during the last days of before the surrender, I mean, most of them were already sick because they were on half rations beginning of January, as early as January 5. They were already on half rations. By March, they were on quarter rations. And by end of March, majority, they were no longer any reserve troops because most of them were suffering from disease and starvation. And so during the last days before April 9, during the surrender, so the 41st Infantry was in the middle of Mount Samat, at the top of Mount Samat. And, you know, they suffered majority of the bombings by the Japanese Air Force. They carpet bombed Bataan. Bataan before then was jungle. And after the surrender, it became denuded because of the bombing. So a lot of the soldiers burned down. And according to him and the training manual, some even took their own lives, or they were writing farewell letters. And when I asked him if that was true, he broke down. And I never saw my father do that. And it turned out that was the typical reaction of all those who went through Bataan. They never told their families.
All those stories just were never shared with even their families. I'm showing a map here of the situation in 1942, early 1942, when the US Armed Forces in the Philippines and Philippine Armed Forces did a strategic retreat to Corregidor And I love how you say Bataan. That explains the two A's in Bataan. You say it correctly. There's a, kind of another syllable there.
Oh, you know who taught me that pronunciation?
Who?
Was an American.
Really?
Who was in Bataan. Don't you know what? It's Bataan. It's land of the children. Oh, I never knew that because I used to say Bataan. And then he said Bataan. Bata means child.
Oh, it means, that's what it means, really?
Well, that's what he told me.
That's what he told you. Hey, I'll go with that. Okay.
I'll go with that, yeah.
But it was just, they lasted as long as they could possibly last. And then finally, General Wainwright surrendered to the Japanese. And then the real torture began, the Bataan Death March. Could you just say a little bit, could you explain to people a little bit what the Bataan Death March was?
So basically, as I said previously, most of the troops were already suffering from major disease and starvation. However, the Japanese did not have the means to transport them some 65 miles away in April, which is the hottest month of the year, triple-digit temperatures with 100% humidity. And the worst part was those who could no longer go on were either beaten, bayoneted, shot, some were even beheaded, and there were no provisions for food, water, or shelter. So they were forced to walk some 65 miles under those conditions. And there is no exact count. There is no count of how many died. They just based it on how many people arrived, how many prisoners arrived at Camp O'Donnell. So it is estimated that between 5,000 to 10,000 Filipinos died during the march, and between 250 and 650 Americans died during the march. However, once they reached Camp O'Donnell, 20,000 Filipinos and about approximately 1,600 Americans died inside.
Oh my. And your father, toward the end of his life, was he able to tell you a little bit about this? A little bit about the experience?
You know, the way he told me, well, I only found out through friends that he was part of this guava detail. They didn't have medicine inside the camp, right? Or hardly any medicine. So they used the leaves of guavas, the guava fruit, for dysentery, to boil the water with the leaves. So he was part of this detail group. And my father was so astute because he hung around with doctors. So the prisoners would call him Doc, even though he was not a doctor.
Right.
And then, so one time, I think the Japanese tried to remove him from the guava detail, but the doctors insisted that he remain in the guava detail. It turned out that they were smuggling medicine and money and letters underneath those guava leaves.
Oh my. Oh my. Boy, what a story. I want to share the Bataan Legacy Historical Society's website with people here on the Zoom side. And my daughter, Ellie, who's joining us this evening, because she doesn't trust me to do this production alone. She will share it, I hope, on the Facebook Live side. I know that you probably like the Veterans Breakfast Club, all your in-person events have been shut down this year, I'm guessing, but I'm guessing maybe you still could use some, a hand. I'm sure you're fundraising like we all are. If people want to help out, your cause, how could they, what do you need? What are you looking for? What can I help?
Well, we have a donation page on the Bataan, on our website. And we also want the word of mouth out there because we're trying to promote the lesson plans, which people can download for free. There's no charge, including primary documents. We only use primary documents because, once you use books, sometimes there's a spin or a bias.
Yep.
So we only use, like military reports or other primary documents. That's what we use. But the lesson plans are free. And we also have a student page. We've featured some students. There's one who is actually from Wisconsin, and she wrote about a topic that is not widely known, because what happened was in 1946. So all these soldiers were part of the US Army. But in 1946, as part of the rehabilitation legislation for the Philippines, a paragraph was inserted in this legislation in February of 1946, which deemed the service of the Filipino soldiers as not active. And by doing that, they were unable to get their veterans benefits.
Oh my.
And, it's never been repealed. And so she gave light to that. And, she's not Filipino. She's not of Filipino descent, but she has a friend who's of Filipino descent. So I was so surprised that she knew about this. So we featured her and we asked her to come and make a presentation during one of our conferences here in San Francisco.
Oh, are you frozen there? No. Okay.
Todd?
Yes.
I have a very pertinent passage that I was going to read tonight pertaining to the Battle of Leyte Gulf.
Oh, thank you.
There we go.
And,
Perfect.
actually, I don't have to do it now, but it was a letter that my dad wrote on All Saints Day. So exactly 76 years ago today.
What was your father's name?
Jules Fern. He was lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard.
Oh.
And he wrote wonderful letters that Julie has compiled into a wonderful book about his service in the Pacific. And Julie has been kind of very kindly offering copies of the book to our members for free. And actually, I have not officially, and I should publicly thank Roland Glenn also. I know that he bought 10 copies at least and arranged for the books to be distributed. Thank you for that, Roland, very much. And thank you, Julie, for the book. And I know that we've had plenty of takers. And I just want to, why don't you read that passage, Julie? And I will share with people a copy of the book.
Okay. Yeah, I send them out whenever you give me addresses, Todd. All right, this is a little lengthy, but I thought it warranted it. And sort of encompasses everything that the attitude that my father had. I had the dawn watch when we steamed into San Pedro Bay. Shortly after 4 o'clock, the big guns of battleships and cruisers began sending their red tracers onto a beach we could not yet see. The water was mill pond quiet, and in the warm dawn, there was a feeling that we were being watched and that our movements were being relayed by a net of radio operators, runners, messengers. Then came that Swedish odor of death, which I came to know so well at Saipan. The bombers that had hit the island during previous days had taken a toll, and the soft Philippine breeze carried that information to us. A morning star hung down, a streak of pale light showed in the east, and for the life of me, all I could think of was, with that odor, was Bach's Come Sweet Death. Mm. The shores and mountains of Leyte soon became visible. We could see Dinagat Island on our left, Hanmahan Deadhead, and Leyte just off the port bow. Even with the shelling, which was spasmodic, a clammy quiet prevailed. Daybreak revealed hundreds of ships, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, LSTs, LSDs, LCMs, LCVPs, LSRs, LCIs, LCTs, transports, cargo ships, oilers, tugs, freighters, aircraft carriers, tenders, lighters, everything the Navy has. By 9 o'clock, we'd taken our beaching formation, and the line ships were plastering the beach with terrific roars. All the soldiers aboard were dressed and garbed with their 50 pounds of rifles, carbines, pistols, blankets, shelter halves, mess kits, K-rations, ammunition, knives, hatchets, shovels. They had had steak and eggs for breakfast to last them for a long day. And when we climbed into the amphibious tanks, each one was given a sandwich and 2 apples.
What a firsthand report that is. What a voice from history
Yeah.
your father had. Oh my, how wonderful, Julie. And Cecilia, you should have a copy of the book.
Yes.
Julie, could you put your email here in the Zoom chat so that Cecilia can get it and maybe email you and connect with you?
Yeah.
What do I do? Click share screen?
No, don't do that.
Oh, what do I do?
We've had some problems with that. No, go to chat. There should be chat at the bottom of your screen. A little, you should see a little like a speech bubble that says chat underneath it. If you click that, that'll open up a chat. And if not, you could just email me and I'll email Cecilia and connect you.
Why don't I see it? I don't see chat.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out then. Why don't you just email me? And
Okay.
Julie, the Battle of Leyte Gulf is included in the curriculum framework that we worked on.
Really?
Yes, because it's the largest naval battle ever.
in history.
Yes, in history that nobody knows about.
Right.
So we felt it had to be in the curriculum framework. So that's
Well, good. Then maybe when you get this book, you can use some part of it.
Yes, and if you can give me a link on how people can acquire the book, that would be good.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So I see your email. Yeah, wherever that went.
So yes, again, if you're interested in a copy of Julie Patton's wonderful book, which is a book of letters of her father back home in World War II, please do let me know. Let me know if you can't connect with Julie right here in Zoom or on Facebook. Email me, Todd, T-O-D-D, at veteransbreakfastclub.com. I'll connect you to Julie. She's sending copies of these books out. She has them stacked in her garage. She wants to get rid of them, and she wants to share.
I see where I type a message.
Yeah, we all learn something new every time we use Zoom.
There we go.
We learn a new trick or two. Fred Harkey, you said that you worked with somebody who was on the Bataan Death March?
Yes. He died, I think, in 94. I worked with the Bureau of Mines after I got out of the Army. And I worked with a gentleman by the name of John Emmerich. He was retired as an inspector with the Bureau of Mines in Brewston. He served in the US Army Air Corps during World War II, where he was captured by the Japanese on Bataan Peninsula in Manila in the Philippines, and was a survivor of one of the cruelest chapters in American history, the Bataan Death March. Mr. Emmerich was 50 years member of the American Legion Post 613 of Finleyville, and a member of the VFW in Library 664. And I worked with him probably for maybe 4 or 5 years. And we didn't talk much, but he took care of the Vietnam veterans. I mean, because we come in around the same time that he was in. So when we got into trouble, he backed us all the way up. I mean, all the way to management. And I remember, John, that we would get visitors in from China, Japan, and stuff like that. And we would actually have to hold him back and get him sent home because he couldn't be in the same area as they were. And we ended up getting a, I believe it was a Chinese director, which really made it tough. And after a while, he finally retired. But John was a great guy, you know. But
Thank you, Fred.
Never really talked too much. We all know that he was in the Bataan Death March, but none of us, you know, we all had our own feelings on everything. So with us with him in Vietnam and with him going through the Bataan Death March. So we were all pretty close to the family.
Thank you, Fred.
The U.S. Army Air Corps, as you know, the Far East Air Force in the Philippines was destroyed during the first week. So those in the Air Corps became infantrymen overnight. And, they were not trained to be infantrymen, but they had to go to Bataan. And then for the Americans, starting late 1942, many of them were shipped to overseas to labor camps in China, Japan, Korea, and Formosa. And the conditions under those labor camps were so abysmal, it was hell. So they were in there, for 3 years. So no wonder that, all these feelings, they harbored all these ill feelings because of what happened to them.
Cecelia, thank you so much for sharing so much of this fascinating history and largely unknown history of the Philippines in World War II, and especially Philippine Scouts and those who served in the Philippine Army, like your father. I would love to have you back on anytime that you have anything that you'd like to share. And certainly if you think that you know of any, World War II veteran who might be willing and able to join us on Zoom, would love to have you and them.
Yes.
I think I would love to hear that history. I think everybody here would love to hear that.
I don't know. I don't think there's any Bataan Death March survivor who is still able to speak.
Right.
Because they're either 100 or more.
Right.
But World War II veterans, I could share with them.
I think that would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Cecelia.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us from California. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right. I do want to go to our featured guest today, who is Warren. Hello, Warren. I'm going to ask to, are you unmuted here? Let's see.
There you go. Thank you.
I think you are.
Yeah, I'm here, Todd.
How you doing, Warren?
I'm doing fine. I got my buddy here today, too.
Andrew. Who's your buddy? Andrew.
My grandson.
Yeah. Hi, Andrew. How are you doing?
His wife's here.
Andrew is a Marine, and he has an interesting story. Andrew,
Yes,
we are celebrating the 245th birthday of the Marine Corps tomorrow night on our Zoom happy hour. If you could make it, we'd love to have you. Thank you for being such a wonderful grandson. I know that the two of you bond a lot because you both served in the military, you both served in war, and you could talk to each other about it. I want to show a picture of Warren. I love the story behind this picture, Warren. Can you share it, please?
Well, what's to tell about it? It's a picture.
It's a picture. When was it taken, though?
Oh, I see what you want. That picture was taken in Cherbourg. When Cherbourg was captured, we took that over, and I ran into a photographer place, and he took the picture, and I sent it home to my mother. It's the first letter I sent her since D-Day. And I just wrote on it, "Hi, Mom, I made it." And that's all.
Just amazing. I love it. And you look like you're relieved in this picture somehow to have made it. I mean, you've said many times, Warren, that you trained for 1 year to do one thing, and that is land on Utah Beach on D-Day.
That's right. That's exactly what we did in England. I got to England in 43. And I volunteered for the Special Brigade. I went over with the 4th Division. And then they asked for volunteers when I got there, and I volunteered for the Special Brigade. And they told us what it was all about. They said, you don't have to, you don't want to, but a couple of us did.
Why did you volunteer?
I don't know, because we was 18, give something to do.
I see Jack
Get
Morrow.
an old man to do it.
I mean, yeah, but you understood the danger involved, and it was a kind of an engineer outfit. You were there to clear mines, right? Was that the job of the 531st Special Brigade?
That was part of their job. That wasn't my job, though. My job was to give them covering fire, get into the wall, and get the Germans occupied so that they could clear the beach from the mines and get after bandoliers. When I shot the bandoliers, they get rid of a lot of mines that way.
What was the training like for this mission?
I'll tell you, Todd. I climbed cliffs. I never went swimming because they had everything in that outfit. I wouldn't go in the water. I'm not a good swimmer. And of all the year I was over there, I only had one day, one weekend, one evening off, I guess, to go to town and celebrate. So we did cross Falmouth, I think it was Falmouth, England. I went over there, but we weren't allowed to walk. We weren't allowed to do anything. We just didn't do nothing. We worked, and by God, we trained and trained and trained, and just every day, 24 hours a day.
I do want to talk about Operation Tiger, but which was a part of your training. It was a dress rehearsal 2 months before D-Day.
Yeah,
right?
It was in April. April 28th, I think.
Well, let's talk about it now, if you don't mind.
Okay.
That was the big dress rehearsal. It involved, like, from what I've read, 20, 30,000, American soldiers landing on beaches, lots and lots of ships and landing craft. It was a dress rehearsal of D-Day. And
when we trained, when we were in that, we was get on these. I was on an LCT, and then off of that LCT, we get in a Higgins boat and go in. But when this happened, Todd, why? It must have been, I don't know, real early in the morning, most probably 2 or 3 o'clock when we was out there in the ocean, and bay or whatever it was, and the German torpedo boats got a hold of them, and they sunk about 3 ships, and torpedoed the ships. The guys were jumping in the water, and I don't know, it was just something. I never did get to the beach that day. Never did.
You never got to the beach that day?
No, never did. They pulled us out of there because our ship didn't get hit. And when all the bodies you can see floating around, it was a terrible thing. I don't know how the hell to talk about it.
Oh boy, here are some pictures.
And then they shipped us back to camp.
This is one of the LSTs that was hit but didn't sink. 2 LSTs were sunk. And I think almost, how many, 800 or 1,000 Americans were killed in this operation, I believe, Warren.
Yeah, well, what was involved in that was a 4th Division and our brigade, 531st Brigade, in the Navy for this Operation Tiger, because they were the head runners of the whole damn operation, see? But they didn't expect those torpedo boats coming out of Cherbourg.
Right.
I didn't even know they had them there until I got out of the water.
Oh boy!
But they surprised them, and when all the excitement started, we just thought it was more operations going on first, and all kind of tracers, different colored tracers the Germans had. So I don't know what to say about it, Todd. It was just a mess, and we got out of there, and from then on, we weren't even allowed to talk about it. They put us in camp with the guards. You weren't allowed off.
And I wish I knew the history better, Warren, but I do know that, you were not allowed to talk about it. Nobody knew about it. This was not covered in the American media or any media. This was the sinking of 2 ships, part of this Operation Tiger, which was a dress rehearsal for D-Day. 2 or 3 German E-boats, torpedo boats, sunk American ships, killed hundreds of American GIs who were rehearsing for D-Day. And it was such a catastrophe that it was covered up. And I don't think that Americans really knew about it until long after the war.
No, they didn't. They did years after the war.
Years after the war.
What was I going to say?
When they landed.
Well, what as part of the operation, the British were supposed to protect our rear and get their boats out there. And I don't know how to explain it, but it was some kind of radio activity. They were on a different wave than what the Americans were on, and they couldn't contact anybody for help. The Americans could talk to the Americans, but not to the British. It was supposed to protect the rear. and they didn't do it.
Mm.
See, and they couldn't get a radio going to get on the same wave that they were on. That's what I read in the books now.
Warren, what do you remember of D-Day itself, June 6, 1944, and kind of preparations for the big day that you've been training for a year?
Well, we got on the ships in England, and then we started over, then we came back. I don't know. We went over on the 5th. I think I might have got on that ship on the 3rd. And we just sat there and waited. And later on, anyway, when we went over, it was a long ride, and half the guys got sick. Boy, were they terribly sick too. Then they went down to the rope ladders, the rope nets. We climbed down into the Higgins boats. And those Higgins boats were bouncing that water. It was so rough, and they was going up and down. And a couple guys would slip and fall, and they'd get caught between the Higgins and the ship, and then they'd crunch themselves and hurt their legs and arms, and then they'd heave them back up on deck and take them back to England, and just get our whole company in a couple Higgins boats. And then we'd go out and ride around in a circle, and then we'd all line up. And we got all lined up, then they'd go in. And Todd, these boats were so damn full on the floor, so full of vomit. The guys were sick. And I seen one guy puked right in the officer's face. It was terrible. I don't see how the boys could ever fight. I was lucky. I didn't get sick, though. I never got sick or anything, but I was walking in it. And then when we got into the beach, why, you see, they trained us in England for a year for everything that you think could happen. But they didn't train us for what happened. Because we got in there, we didn't expect to see Higgins boats disappear. I didn't expect to see so many bodies in the water. When I hit the beach, I was expecting to see a lot of craters. There was none there at all, none at all at our beach. They bombed it, but they bombed inland, killed a lot of cattle, I guess. And we didn't have the protection we were supposed to have. And so when the boat got close to landing, well, he dropped the ramp. The first wave, a lot of guys got hit, and some of them never even got off the ramp. And I jumped over the side. I had my wife out on a Higgins boat, and I showed her exactly where I was standing and how I went over the side of that thing.
That was at D-Day Conneaut at the reenactment.
Yep, that's right. Yep. And I showed her, she took her out in that boat and showed her where I was. And anyway, I went over the side of that, and I got in the water. It was way up to my chest. And I goes in there, and there was, I don't know how the good Lord spared me, but he did. And I gets in there, and I'm running up the beach, and when the water would get more shallow, you could move a little faster and little zigzag motions like you're supposed to. And there was no coverage. And I'd take cover wherever you could. And my job was, in our group, as a rifleman, was to pin those boys down in the Germans and not let them, no counterattacks would come in, We used to shoot at everything, everybody. If I seen a leg hanging out the door, I'd shoot it. That's the way it was. Everything was like that. But when I was running up the beach, I took cover behind one of these obstacles. And I seen one of the brigade guys, he was running up, and he was really running fast as he could go. And a 50 caliber hit him. And it just took one leg off. That boy got up 3 times to run. That's how bad he was trained. You ain't supposed to stop. Get up and run. He said, if your buddy gets down, jump over him and keep going. And the older I get, Todd, the worse I get. It gets harder to do.
There's
I saw that boy get up, and there was nothing I could do for him. So I got up and I made it to the wall. Now, the wall that we had there, when we went over there, visited, that wall was gone. But when I was over there, that wall was only about 4 foot high. Now, on Omaha, they had a bigger one, but down here, we didn't have that. I got to the wall, and I did okay there. And I don't know how long I was there, a pretty good wall. And I did a lot of shooting there and went through about 3 or 4 bandoliers almost. And then I jumped over the wall and I crawled inland and I hit the part where the swamp was. And I crawled up in the swamp and I ended up, but where I got, I was all by myself. Everybody would ended up someplace you didn't know where they're going. So I crawled up the side of the road in that swamp, some partly in the water and mostly up on the bank of the road, and I was keeping low as I could, and I made it up to the church. And when I got into that little church, why, the front of the church was blowed out, the back of the church was blowed out, the roof was gone, pews were all gone, and I walked through it, and the pulpit was still standing there, and had a Bible on it. And I brushed the Bible off and looked at it, and then I kept going, and I always got into the hedgerows. And there was another experience. And I got up through the hedgerows.
Warren, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you simply because I want to share something with our viewers. There's a remarkable piece of newsreel of Warren landing on D-Day at Utah Beach. This is actually, you heard him tell the story of jumping over a 4-foot wall and then crawling to a swampy area, which was an area that the Germans had flooded to prevent paratroopers from landing.
Paratroopers were in there.
Right. And this is Warren. You can see him so clearly. I have it playing on a loop. I'll show it to you now. Warren is in the foreground with the grenade in his left hand, and he's crawling. That's the piece of, I think it's just absolutely amazing that we have Warren Goss here in a newsreel footage. And Warren, you said back home your family actually saw this in a movie theater.
They saw it. I don't think they saw this one, Todd, but they saw another one. They said I was running up the beach. They saw that. They saw that in the theater. I don't know if they saw this one or not. They tried to get a shot of it, but they wouldn't give it to them.
I would love to track down that other footage because there was a Signal Corps cameraman with you, and who took you coming down a rope net or a cargo net, going on the beach, and then this crawling part of it. I would love to get the rest of it if we could track it down. Fascinating.
I don't know how you do that.
We'll get Henry on it.
Pardon?
We'll get Henry Shopke on it. He's able to he's able to do amazing things.
Anyway, Todd, from there on, from then I was supposed to go. When we get time, we're supposed to get up to St. Marie Gleason and help relieve the paratroopers. But I didn't make it there. I made it to St. Marie de Mont. And when I was in St. Marie de Mont, that's where I saw the second wave of paratroopers coming in. They come in broad daylight. And my God, did they scare me. As far as I could see from right to left, there was nothing but paratroopers. You looked all around, everybody was coming down. It was really a lot of people coming down. And I thought they were Germans coming, with a counterattack. But I thought, oh boy, it's going to get bad now. Anyway, they landed, and there was one paratrooper. I was laying in a ditch by the cemetery there. And there was one paratrooper who was coming down, and on the way down, he was cutting himself loose. By the time he landed, he was holding on by one hand, and he just let the parachute go and run. He was in this graveyard, and he got behind a tombstone. I hollered at him. He was about, I guess, 50 feet away. And I asked him, come over here. So he come over and jumped in the ditch with me. And we sat there and talked. And I asked him, I says, why were you so late getting out of that plane? And he says that pilot got so damn scared, he just banked that plane around and he rolled clean back to the tail. He was like they call the jump sergeant, I guess. I wasn't in a paratrooper, I don't know nothing about it, but he made sure all the guys were out the door. And he says, and he rolled back to the plane and he had to crawl out on his hands and knees to get to that door to jump, get out of there. And I guess by that time, the rest of his guys must have been 5-10 miles away by then. So we told each other stories, and we heard some shooting here and a lot of shooting there. There was a lot of things going on. St. Rita Mont was a hard time to take. And then I finally got in touch with some guys and some of our troops, and I had to go back to the beach. He asked me to go back and get some ammunition, so I did. And by that time, that day, they were even bringing in ammunitions on the boats, and food and supplies. So I goes back to the beach, and I don't know how long. I was pretty far back from the beach too. How long it took, but I get back to the beach. And I had one other guy with me. And here comes this P-51 plane, and he dives down on the beach and he does a barrel roll, and he does a victory roll, and up he goes in the air, really high in the air. He's going. Well, everybody there thought he was an enemy airplane, German plane. And the Army started shooting at him, and I was shooting at him. And that guy get up there, and I could see all the tracers around that plane, and I don't know how he could ever get out of it. He bailed out. He came down, and that plane was coming down, and I can see it coming and coming. And it looked like it was coming right into my hole. And one wing tore off, and it sort of veered off, and it landed at another away from me, not too far, and made a big hole in that beach there. And the bullets were exploding. And when he hit the ground, I jumped. It bounced me clean out of the hole I was in. Just bounced me clean out. Boy, it made me dizzy and everything. The ears were ringing. And I crawled by hands and knees, and I jumped in another hole with two other guys. And we just laid there and waited until all this ammunition quit exploding. And those 50 caliber millimeter just flying all around the damn place, ground level, And then it slowed down, and then I finally got out of there. And Todd, right there's where I started smoking. I never smoked, I never drank, I didn't do none of that stuff, And I asked the guy, I said, give me a cigarette. And the guy gave me a Camel. By God, I smoked that thing with no trouble at all. I don't know why I did it, but I did it.
Oh, man.
Then I had to get the ammunition. And the ammunition was dumped over there, and they had some kind of lieutenant there was telling, he wouldn't go in. He says, he's not going in there. He says, he told you what row to go in, where to get it. And so we went in, we grabbed a couple cases, we carried them out. And the guy in the Jeep took us back up to St. Rita Mont. And there's where I spent my first night. But that day was over. And I spent my first night in that ditch where as you remember, Todd, we was over there. We went right through St. Rita Mont. We made a left turn right before the cemetery there.
I will tell people I had the great privilege of traveling to Utah Beach with Warren Goss in the fall of 2018 and, retracing his footsteps with him. So did Rick Witt, who's with us here on the Zoom side. He was also there. It was such a delight delight is too pale of a word. It was a thrill to kind of, really truly walk with him where he came through. You mentioned the church that was bombed out. We found that chapel. We went in to the chapel and saw exactly where you were standing. Here is Warren at the wonderful museum, the Utah Beach Museum. He was immediately kind of surrounded with people who wanted to take his picture and talk to him. Here he is in the Roosevelt Cafe, which was actually one of, I think, an objective of yours. Here's a picture of what it looked like in 1944. You remember this, Warren, this building?
Oh my God, I certainly do remember that because I cleared that bunker right there. That was a communication bunker. That bunker there they had there, they made it look like a little cottage house for the people to, the airplanes take picture. They didn't take it as a bunker.
Yeah, you could see that
That
these
was
are
the second
windows.
bunker.
These windows are drawn onto the bunker. This was a German communication bunker made to look like a house.
Yeah,
That
that's
building
right.
is still standing today, and it's the Roosevelt Cafe. We had lunch there. Warren had lunch there, and Warren put his picture up here on the wall here and signed the wall. And of course, it was great to travel with Warren because it was like, basking in the reflected glory of a World War II hero. And it's just amazing. We went into the bunker. We took a look at what was in there.
Yeah, we took them down in the bunker.
Just
Yeah.
amazing. And I will have to tell this story too. You were, this is the director of the Utah Beach Museum, and she knew that Warren was coming, and she had a medal cast for him and did a fairly nice presentation to Warren. She, is, a pretty French woman comes out and starts speaking to Warren and says, "How are you today, Monsieur Goss?" And he responded, "Better now that I've seen you." And so that's why we're all laughing. Sorry about that, Warren. I had to share that story. Yeah, but it was just such a thrill, Warren, to go back with you, and you were our tour guide. And I just also want to remind people, Warren has just covered one day of his epic World War II experience. His memory
you followed
is
us all the way up into Bastogne, and I was in that forest up there.
That's right. That's right. I mean, Warren's memory is incredible. I mean, we've spent here, 20 minutes just talking about one day. He remembers everything. And I want to, before we go on, and I'm looking at the clock and I realize, Warren, I would love to have you back on next week if you can make it. Okay, I'd love to have you back on so you could share more of your stories, because you have a lot of stories that I know we're not going to be able to get to today. And I want to also invite anybody here on the Zoom side or the Facebook side who has a question they want to ask. Dale Gower, you were on that trip also. That's right. You were there in Europe with Warren. If anybody has a question they want to ask, please do speak up. You could put it in the chat. You could share it on Facebook Live, and we could transfer it over. Warren, can I ask you, were you scared that first day? Or were you so busy? Was it full of adrenaline that you weren't scared?
You were asking me if I was scared.
Yeah.
You're damn right I was scared. I thought, boy, it ain't gonna be hell to pay here, man. When you seen all those guys laying around there, I have a picture of that beach when we were there at that time, and you have that, I think, Todd.
I probably do. Yeah, the picture of what, Utah Beach?
Yeah, with all the guys laying there, and I signed it. I got it signed.
Okay.
A couple other guys signed it. I got it here at home.
And then after your mission, you trained for this day, this one day, June 6th, D-Day. And then after that, you had to, how did you get transferred to the 70th Infantry Division?
Well, we after we took Cherbourg, went into Cherbourg, we played around there a little bit. And then in Cherbourg, we took the third pillbox we were supposed to take, and that was another thing. And then we went back up, and I got involved a little bit. They took us up and got us involved a little bit in St. Lo. And I didn't have it as bad because the 29th had a heck of a hard time up there. It was terrible. I think they took it 3 times before they kept it.
And I'm sharing pictures.
There's a pillbox there that we had to take. The third, that was the biggest one over there that I've seen.
Yeah.
I took my grandchildren up there. You remember that, Andrew? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're
How
gonna
do you
have
take a pillbox like this, Warren?
Well, we didn't take it. But what happened there, Todd, we bypassed it, see? Now, there was a month we bypassed that, was into Cherbourg. And then the conversations between the guys is, well, somebody got to go get that pillbox and take a damn thing and get those guys out of there because they can still shoot up the beach. And we didn't know who was going to do it. I spent about maybe 3 or 4 days in Cherbourg. And
that's when you have your picture taken.
And then they sent up one squad to take that pillbox. And I didn't go. They didn't ask me, but I'd have went if they'd asked me. Because they had machine guns parked all over the hills, dug in, you know, and they take a tank, tear it, and put on there, that's their cement, and then they get in there. Anyway, the story came back and it was a pushover because those guys were so hungry and running out of ammunition and a whole month with no food. And they was bombing the heck out of that thing too, because the shell, you can see the shell points all over.
Yeah.
And they said it was a pushover. It wasn't a hard job at all. And that's because they bypassed it, see.
Okay.
That was way out in the peninsula of the bar there sticks out in the peninsula, and then it could shoot all the way up to the English beach. And it could also shoot to England.
Man.
They tried. And in England, we knew they were there, and we had a story. In England, we knew where every street was, every house, and every barn, and every building. They did had a map laid out just exactly like it was.
You didn't know about the hedgerows, though, did you?
No, we didn't know about that. That was a different story. You know, I got involved in the hedgerows, but not as much as other people.
Yeah.
I think the 4th Division had more to do that than we did.
Right.
And I don't know why the hell every place had 4th Division went, it seemed like we were there with them. I couldn't understand that why. Well, anyway, Todd.
I'm sorry, Warren. Carol Popchak has a question for you. Carol.
Yeah, just a quick one, Warren. I'm curious. You spent a lot of time training for D-Day. I'm curious, to what extent did you feel your training paid off? Were you able to apply things that had been emphasized in training, or did you really have to fly by the seat of your pants?
You mean what good did the training do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you feel prepared?
It did a lot of good. They brainwash you into not quitting.
Yeah, the seat of your pants becomes the training.
And you know, no matter what you had to do, you went in and did it. They didn't teach you to back off. And we did a lot of things that it was impossible to do. Those boys did it.
I heard your grandson, Andrew. I'm sorry, Andrew chimed in because Carol was kind of asking, like, nothing ever goes as planned, right? But you've got to kind of like, you've got to solve the problem. You've got to improvise, adapt, and overcome, right?
That's what the training does. It teaches you how to take cover, teaches you how to fall, teaches you a lot of things to do in combat, hand-to-hand combat. And if you're running and you get shot at and you land in this field, you don't lay there, you roll around about 6 foot away because they're going to shoot at that spot where you landed and stuff. Just a lot of different things, you know.
Boy,
you know, everything's going on. The training isn't something you got to think about. The training is the seat of your pants, kind of.
You just do it. You don't even question it. You just do it.
You train so much, in other words, Andrew and Warren, it becomes like second nature. It's like a reflex. You just do it. You don't even have to think about it.
That's exactly right.
Tell them you trained like a dog.
You know, Todd, I could take that M1 of mine and take it apart in the nighttime and clean it up and put it together and never even look at it. The other day, I went down to take it apart and I forgot how to do it.
Really? Well, it has been 75 years there, Warren.
And thankfully, you haven't had to use it.
I quit right here. Andrew still knows how.
How amazing. And I know, how did you then get into the 70th Division, Warren?
Well, when we got back from St. Louis, went down to the beach again, and the brigade did its part. our special brigade did its part, what we were supposed to do there, and they was breaking it up. And they sent me inland to what they call a repo depot camp.
He's listening.
And in this repo depot camp, I got transferred from there into the 70th Division. And I fought with the 70th Division until we ended the war.
That's just like last week, Jack Morrow was saying about the replacement depot, the Repo Depot, where you would just kind of, where replacements were grabbed and put into different divisions.
He's on 10%.
Oh, is his iPad running out of juice there, Andrew?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to plug it in. Oh, Jim Jameson, yes.
Hey, Nick has a question.
Need an extension cord,
Get an
Rhonda.
extension cord.
Yes.
Nick has a question.
Nick DeVoe asks here, what time of day and how much daylight? When is that, Nick? What are you talking about? What, D-Day?
Who's he talking to?
What? Hey, Warren, I'm relaying a question that somebody has. What time of day did you land on Utah Beach?
Oh, it was in the morning, 6 o'clock. I'd say about 6:30.
6 o'clock, 6:30, Nick.
Yeah.
And was it daylight?
Pardon?
What was there daylight?
Yeah, it was daylight. Absolutely daylight. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no trouble seeing it. It was it was so damn busy though. There's tanks coming in and didn't make it and stuff like that. It was just.
I have another picture here that I'm sharing of you in the 70th Division. This is the Battle of Saarbrücken, which, as I remember, was one of the biggest operations after D-Day that you were involved with, right?
Oh, that was a big battle. In fact, the biggest battle was Sterling Window. That's the town before Saarbrücken. And the Germans, see, it was right at the German border, and the Germans thought we'd never get in there. And that's where I had a building blow up on me in there.
What happened?
What happened?
The damn thing got hit with a screaming Mimi, I guess, and caved in, and a big log came down on me.
Oh, a log. That's right. A log came down on you.
Yeah, and smashed me, and they put me in a Jeep and took me back to Nancy, France, and that's where the hospital was. That's where the headquarters was too for Blood and Guts. That was his headquarters in there too.
Of Patton.
And I went into the hospital, and I could walk around and everything. And then what happened? I was crapping blood and peeing blood. And I went back there, and all these guys are laying around. There's a lot of people there too. The doctor looked at me, and he took off my shirt and looked at me. He didn't see nothing wrong. He says, "You're battle worthy. You go back to the front." So that's what I had to do.
Oh gosh.
So I went back. I was in there, about, I'd say, a half hour better. That's all.
So you were never treated. You had internal.
I never took care of that until I got home, and then when the war was over, I ended up in the hospital, and they took care of it there.
Oh my. Never got a Purple Heart for that, huh?
No, they don't. We don't have blood showing.
Oh boy.
I never thought about Purple Hearts anyway. I didn't care much about medals.
You mentioned
I
that
I got a lot of them. I don't know what they were for though.
You mentioned that you had you went on a lot of patrols.
Oh my God, yes, I did. I run patrols. I run a lot of patrols.
What were they like?
When I was in a brigade, I run patrols for them down there, and they sent me out to do a patrol and see what the Germans were doing. I used to take a map with me. They'd give me a map and send me out to find out where the 88s were, where they was digging a machine gun nest, and what was around the village before we'd take it. And I did a lot of them patrols. In fact, I did patrols behind the enemy lines. About 4 or 5 of us would go. It would bust into a house, take the people's prisoner, and the old man say he had to go to work. And he says, okay, you go to work. But if any Germans show up here, you're going to be talking. These people ain't going to live. And we used to scare them that way. And they'd keep at it. And one time, this was in Normandy then, I run 2 patrols out in one night. In Landsberg, Captain Landsberg, he come to me and he says, Warren, we got to find out this and this and this. And he says, how about taking a patrol over there? And I says, I ain't going. He says, you have to go. He says, and I said, I ain't going. And he says, you're going to disobey my order? I said, I ain't going. I didn't say anything about disobeying. And he kept arguing with me. And I told him, I says, okay, I'll go if you go with me. If you don't go, I ain't going. Well, he wouldn't go. So I didn't go. I don't know what the hell happened. And he threatened to punish me some sort. He going to put me in a bullpen there. And I didn't much give a shit. The bullpen had been safer anyway.
Did you ever get put in the bullpen for anything?
Close to it. Yeah. Some of those guys, I didn't think they knew what they were doing. Honest to Pete, I didn't. And I was only a PFC, and these guys are supposed to know more than me. They did know more college stuff, but they didn't know the actual work of it. You know, you can read the book, but the book don't tell you how to do it when you get there.
Right. And you said before, Warren, you've said before that you were in part what helped make you a good soldier is that you were a country boy. You knew your way around a rifle. You knew how to crawl around and sneak around. That helped.
I learned a lot of that when I was in Pennsylvania Auxiliary. I really liked it. It was so much fun. Anyway, but yeah, the country boys could take care of themselves. The city boys were living in lights, and us country boys, we didn't have no lights. We just live in the dark.
I'm going to share a picture that I went over to your house last week, I think it was last week. And you shared this picture with me on your phone, and I took a picture of it. I'd never seen a picture of the house that you grew up in. Of course, a lot has changed about this house since you grew up in, but this was the farmhouse that you grew up in. There was a chicken farm, right, Warren?
Yeah, seven kids are born, right? I was at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kids. 7, 8. Gene was 8. Mm-hmm. 8 kids was born right back in that bedroom there. Never went to the hospital. That of course, that ain't that way the house looked then.
Right. And here's the rear.
There's the back of the house there.
And then you told me that dormer up top was a bathroom.
Yeah, that's right. See, from here on over, we dug it. We took a horse and plow. We dug his cellar out for this half of this house because he had so many kids he needed more room. And put this on there. And I was a young fella, and I'd stick my gun out that window on that porch, and pull it off the roof, and I'd go hunting with my shotgun. So my mother would get so mad at me. But there was no other houses around there. There was none around. I helped build these houses up here. I built them up there.
So you would stick a gun out that window and shoot rabbits, Warren? Is that what you were saying when you were a kid?
Yeah, ringnecks too.
And your mom didn't like it?
Oh no, she's afraid I'm going to shoot myself.
I think I'm on your mom's side on this one.
I'm just a little guy. Had a 20 gauge shotgun.
But it helped you in the war, didn't it?
Well, every morning, Todd, 4 o'clock when I got to be in grade school, as a paper boy, 4 o'clock in the morning, I got out of there and left the papers. I peddled the papers. And I had a whole long route out that country, do it on the bicycle. Then after I got done with the paper route, I worked in a milk truck. And I delivered milk. Then a milk truck driver would drop me off at school. And I was always late. And they even wrote excuses for me. I
And
just
you would
couldn't
bring,
get along in school.
you brought your shotgun to school too.
Oh yeah, Charlie King, he took care of that. He was a janitor up at the Avon School, and I'd leave it down in his office down in the sorry right by the coal bin where I shoveled coal for him. See, that's why he helped me out. When I was a kid, Todd, I shoveled coal for 25 cents a ton and brought it home to Mom. After instead of going to school, I'd be shoveling coal.
Mm.
I didn't get no education. Took me 8 years to get a third grade education.
Mm.
So that's the way it was. And all that money I made, I took home to my mother.
You did get a high school diploma.
He knows that.
Yes, you did get a high school diploma. Warren, I'm going to end. I know we're 1 minute from the end of our program, and thank you for coming again. I knew we would just run out of time, and I was planning on you coming again to continue your story. I do want to end by showing a picture. I love these wonderful pictures of your father, who is a World War I veteran.
Test pilot.
Yep, that's my dad.
He was a test pilot in World War I.
I got another picture I to show you of me holding his picture, and I marked World War I and World War II.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And did he suggest that you go into the Air Corps or the Army? What advice did he give you?
Pardon?
Did he give you advice for World War II?
No, he didn't give me no advice. He was too busy. No, what the hell would he give me advice on?
I don't know. Maybe to join the Air Corps instead of the Army. So
I tried that, but I didn't have an education enough to get in it. In his day, he was a third grade man too. In his, he was out of Buckhannon or out of West Virginia, Randolph County.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Rock, where he was from. It's close to Adolph. Adolph was the only town around there. And he come up there, and my mother was from Roanoke, West Virginia. All West Virginia hillbillies.
Boy, oh boy. I love that picture, and I love the stories that you've shared with us, Warren. And I'm grateful that you'll be able to come back with us next week to continue some of this, because there's more that I want to share. And does anybody have a question before we close our program here? Let me know just by raising your hand or putting it. Oh, hey, Roland.
Whenever I share with anybody that I'm going to attend a meeting of the Veterans Breakfast Club, I always indicate that when I leave the meeting, I feel better educated. And here we have had a wonderful array of experience. Warren, I'm glad you showed the pictures of your dad, and also that your grandson was sitting right there beside you. I didn't know anything as much detail about the Bataan March as Cecilia shared. And we heard another chapter of Coast Guard experiences from Julie. And the meeting got started with a 12-year-old youngster telling us about the work that he's doing collecting autographs of World War II veterans. Celia, I really appreciated how rapidly you invited Henry to contribute to your project. So sometimes I think we ought to add an S to the end of generation, because here we have multiple generations in one meeting that have made such wonderful contributions to our education. I'm just thrilled by this.
They are our future.
They are.
It is stunning. We have, and I hate, I'm not always saying your age here, Julia Parsons, but we have 99-year-old Julia Parsons, a Navy wave with a wonderful story of her own. And then we have 12-year-old Henry from Wisconsin. and everything in between. And that just absolutely warms my heart that the stories that we're hearing tonight, will be passed on. That's what we're all about at the Veterans Breakfast Club. And I thank you all for joining us here on the Zoom side and on the Facebook. Cecelia, thank you for beaming in all the way from California. And Henry, thank you for joining us again. Warren, thank you for sharing the stories that you've shared and for coming back. And I want to thank the whole Goss family. I wanted to share pictures of Mary also and get her on. And I know Rhonda helped you get on, and Andrew and Cheyenne. Thank you for joining us in the background at the Goss family. All right, everyone. I hope to see you tomorrow night for our Veterans Breakfast Club happy hour. We celebrate the Marine Corps birthday. Dan Vaughn, I expect you to be there. All right. You too, Jack Morrow. I'll see you guys. Take care.